throughout the past year in COVID, for the world, for the country, and for campus, we've been through a lot.
It's a good question.
Suspending in-person classes
last
March, to ending the semester early last semester, to now administering the vaccine on campus, which is a huge deal. So how do you feel that yourself and the administration as a whole has handled this pandemic?
I'm actually very proud of how the university has handled this pandemic. Where I think that we've done well is we made a commitment right from the beginning to prioritize science and prioritize health and safety. You know, I told the chancellor when he asked me to take this job, you know, if I'm going to do this, I have to know up front that the university is committed first and foremost to doing everything the experts tell us we need to do to keep our campus community, our students, and our Central New York community safe. And, you know, he made that commitment, and, you know, in the context of your question, I will tell you there has not been a single instance where the public health experts have made a recommendation with regard to what we need to do to live up to that commitment to prioritize health and safety that the university has not supported, that the leadership in the university has not supported. I am proud that we also, from the beginning, all the way back to May, we made a commitment that we were going to reopen the university in the fall. We didn't know if we could. We didn't know if the state of New York was going to let us, but from the perspective of planning, you know, the chancellor and all of us basically said, we're going to assume that we're going to be able to reopen this university in the fall. And we spent the summer operating under that assumption, always knowing that the state or the federal government could pull the rug out from us. But I think if we wouldn't have done that, if we would have you know, instead said, we're going to wait and see, we probably wouldn't have reopened.
What have some of the biggest challenges been in terms of enacting the plan?
Higher education is a second career for me. I was a military officer for 14 years before I came to Syracuse University, and I have said to the chancellor and others that the past year has been more challenging than anything I ever experienced, even as an active duty military officer. And it's all because we have to make decisions. COVID has been an experience that has required we make decisions in the face of an inherently unknowable future. It wasn't until August that New York State actually put out policy for reopening colleges and universities. So it was this constant pivot. We had to make a lot of commitments and sort of bets on infrastructure and supply chain. We weren't positive we could actually do testing on campus up to a month before school started.
Now there's a vaccine that students are able to get on campus. Can you talk about the process of getting vaccinations on campus?
We started asking New York State for the ability to vaccinate students on campus in January. And every week we would resubmit our application just to let them know, remind them that we're ready to go. In early January, when Onondaga County stood up their vaccination clinic, they were critically short of personnel who were actually licensed and qualified to give vaccines, so we volunteered our employees from the Barnes Center. We did it because it was the right thing to do for our community, but we also realized it was great training, so they would become trained and proficient in the protocol for the COVID vaccine so that when we finally did get vaccine, they would be ready to go. And turns out that's exactly what happened. So we were able to finally secure, not from New York State, but from Onondaga County. If there is a silver lining to COVID, it is that today our relationship with the county and the city of Syracuse is stronger than it's ever been. And it's because we were all in this together. It wasn't New York State that got us vaccine, it was Onondaga County. It was the Onondaga County Executive and the Onondaga County Commissioner of Health who said, we're at a place where we need to start vaccinating students. We can't wait for the state to make vaccine available. So the county began a process of diverting some amount of supply of vaccine that they were receiving for New York State directly to Syracuse University.
And there's been some speculation in terms of the first vaccine offered that students were going to get the Johnson & Johnson so the university wouldn't have to monitor students to get a second dose.
To be clear, we're administering the vaccine on behalf of New York State. So that monitoring that you're talking about for all those who are vaccinated in New York State, it's less about the monitoring, it's more about uncertainty about when our students may depart campus for home. We were concerned that for any of our students, we had up until April 15th or so, if we were going to get a 2-shot vaccine, not knowing when some of our students may start departing. The J&J vaccine was actually the one that made the most sense for college students because it's one shot and done, right? What we don't want to do is put a student in a position where they have to then convince a local health department in Arizona or Michigan or Indiana, well, you need to give me my second dose. That's hard to do. It might be that there isn't a second dose to give you when you return to Michigan.
Many students on campus know you not by your face, but by your emails. One of the most standout emails you sent was on August 20th, where you are titled "Last Night's Selfish and Reckless Behavior."
Yep.
Where you condemned a large student gathering on the quad. So just as a follow-up, were there any punishments for this?
So as the person leading the university's COVID response from a public health perspective, I have no visibility at all into the student discipline process. So we did that very purposefully because, I'm responsible, for example, for the team that does contact tracing. We don't want contact tracing to be used as a tool to inform the student discipline process, because if it is, no one's going to talk to us. So we've built this wall. So the student experience team, DPS, et cetera, for any suspected violation, they have to identify it, they have to investigate it, separate from the public health process. I couldn't tell you a single name of a student sitting here today that was referred to the contact process as a consequence of COVID.
Are students and athletes treated differently for violating guidelines?
I don't have direct visibility, but I can tell you some data, and I will say this. I think our student athletes get a little bit of a bad rap as it relates to what people assume to be true about COVID and what's actually true. Student athletes have been less than 1% of all of the COVID cases that we've experienced on campus.
So we've got less than 40 days until the end of the semester, so home stretch is near. At the time that this is being filmed, indoor dining has been opened to 50% capacity again. How likely is it that we'll see another form of shutdown on campus due to outbreaks by the end of the year?
The answer depends on a lot on our students. All the things that we do and policies that we can implement are reactive. The only proactive thing that an individual can do to prevent a COVID infection is behavioral. I'll see that in the data. Give it 4 days, and then we'll start from that opportunity, and we'll start seeing in the surveillance data an uptick in COVID positive cases. So, the answer to your question is I hope not, because there's a direct correlation between the COVID numbers and what we can and cannot do together on campus. And that has to be about all of us.
What do you expect the next semester to look like?
Travel, internships, all of that we're hoping to bring back. And I think we can do it safely. The one unknown variable is the state has to ultimately bless what we plan to do. And I fully expect that New York State will revise its guidance to higher education, the formal policy that right now is governing what we can and cannot do, come early summer. I hope we don't go back to, the rush to go back to normal. We don't forget some of the lessons that we learned during COVID that I think are actually, that actually make us better. My point is, I hope we take some of the good that came from this experience in terms of what we learned and how we were forced to be innovative and apply those innovations to making us better moving forward.